Hey Ryan, what's up?
Oh, hey, Brenton. Not too much. You know what? I have this phase two of the Curiosity Project on the go. I've got a lot of students who are pretty interested to know more about it, and I wanted to chat with you about what that project looks like.
Yeah, yeah. Good, good, good. So, I mean, it would be easier, right, if we just gave them like a 5-page paper to do and then just sent them away for a month to do it, right?
That would be easier, and we've set a precedent already. Phase one, pretty structured, pretty routine,
Yeah.
conventional research process through and through. We could do the exact same thing for phase two. Should we do the exact same thing for phase two?
We should not, Ryan. So, I mean, this is, this is what I've been waiting for. We're going to pop this open and we're still going to stay with structured learning logs so that we can grow in our learning, reflect on learning. But for me, what I like about this is it opens everything up. And so the way that I'm describing it to students is encouraging them to still think about the process of writing a paper because that's very much like the process of doing any kind of research project, even if the outcome's not a paper. So I think the way we've done it, like brainstorming and then a question, research question, the initial research, research notes, annotated bibliographies, and then drafting towards the end, each time refining our thesis, I guess, right? Or going from a hunch to something we've discovered. So this is basically that same process, except we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to unleash the final outcome, right? So it's not necessarily a 6-page paper. It can be
Not
anything.
have to be a paper. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a paper. No.
Mhm.
Um, some students will do a paper because some want to write that way or they want to actually finish what they feel like they started or whatever. But really, it can be any outcome. And then each week, each of the steps will go through 4 more logs that are similar to the previous semester's logs or adapted from them. But we're going to, I think, play with AI and other digital tools and the tools we have access to as UPEI community members to enhance that to create more breadth or to help us I don't know, like what's coming, Ryan? Like how do I
Well,
describe the world ahead where we're going to have all these tools that we have to know how to use?
it's interesting. I think that in general, in this course, in inquiry studies, we have a chance here to experiment with tools that are already affecting us in ways that we're conscious of, that we're not conscious of. I think what I really like about the way that you've described it so far is that the process is familiar to us. We've already gone through the multi-step research process once of being able to say, I've got this hunch or I've got an idea, I've got a question, I'm going to follow through and see where it takes me.
Hmm.
But instead of kind of restricting to the written word for a research paper, we get to really kind of explore where that goes. And specifically to your question about digital tools, we don't know every single AI or digital tool or way to automate certain parts of workflow or to ideate things using new generative AI, chat GPT. I've been using Midjourney for our island experiments. All of these tools um, probably, I suspect, are going to open up all kinds of new avenues for inquiry. So, to be totally honest with you, I'm really interested to see how students use them and where they use them and why they use them. But I don't exactly know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, so like you and have, I mean, we have some working tools that we use and we
Mm.
intend to discover more. So we're saying we're not experts on the individual tools. Do the students have to be like tech like experts as well, or can they come in with like very little knowledge?
Definitely not an expectation to be an expert starting out. I think that this is kind of like a good sandbox mode, especially these first couple weeks to be like really experimental. I guess if we had to set any sort of like ground rules, experiment to your heart's content, just prioritize clear, clean cut, honest documentation of how you're using these tools. Not only is that good for like academic integrity, essential, it's also really good to learn from. So other students, peers can see how you're accessing new information. So We can talk about text generation coming from like large language models like ChatGPT. Sure, we can create text like that and see it presented to us and not necessarily know where it's coming from. But
Mm.
I don't think that that's really going to cut it for this project. I think we really need to see where every single aspect of what we use generative AI, where it's coming from, why you're using it. Um, it makes me wonder, can absolutely everything be text generated for the Curiosity project? Brenton, I'll turn it to you here. I'm curious about
Yeah.
like reflective aspects of this. Like, how do we reflect when it comes to generative tools?
Yeah, so some of this blends and some of this is separate, I think. We're going to talk, I think, this week about prompt generation. So making the right, asking the tools to provide the right kind of response and then working on it and refining it. And we call this an iterative process. So we keep going round and round and round. Well, one of the things we can do is use those tools to help us write better prompts for those tools or for other tools, right? And so that means that at the end of this process, the words of that prompt aren't really ours in a sense, right? But we've learned to shape it. So those sorts of kind of initial tools, I think, are really, as long as we're just clear about what happened in our processes, I think that's fine. Where we'd like to see students still write and write badly, if they don't feel comfortable writing really well, is just when it comes to those self-reflection questions. I experienced this, I felt this, I learned this. We don't want AI to fix that. You're writing mostly to your peers, and so it doesn't have to be at any particular level. Now, when it comes to the final thing, well, it depends what the students make, right? Like if they're making, a final argumentative essay as if they're going to publish it in a newspaper or a magazine or something or blog, certainly we don't like for that medium, they wouldn't want to generate the text from AI.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know about other things. Like if they were redesigning, say, a tent to be able to capture all the heat and coolness possible, then we would expect them to use whatever tools were available to provide as much of the physics as possible, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
visualize. And so we would want them to generate their mock-ups using whatever tools they thought were best. Does that make
Totally.
sense?
It does. And I think kind of you're, talking about different ways that generative AI tools can be used in this process too. I think about things like, well, we're still providing feedback to one another. I don't suspect it would be a very honest or effective means of giving feedback to just simply run another student's work through AI to get some sort of feedback to copy paste. However, if there was a place to look at what an AI software had to do to provide some guidance, as long as you're contextualizing it that way to say, hey, this is what this software says.
Mm,
Have you
I get it.
considered it this way? It's kind of being able to show. We've talked in class about ownership and trying to really stress that ownership of the work you're doing. So, are you the one
Oh,
who owns
that's neat. So
that
Ryan, you
prompt?
could like, sorry to interrupt, you could do like, so in that kind of feedback, when someone says, okay, there's this thing just doesn't seem to be working,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have words for it, but I popped it into Perplexity and started asking some questions, and it came out with this technical response. Does that make any sense to you? Do you know what I mean? Is that the kind of thing you mean? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, just being able to unpack it. If I'm reading your feedback, I should know what's going on. I should know whose work is coming from where. I think that's going to make for like a more meaningful experience too. It's something that we can actually learn from and can guide this work a little bit more effectively.
Okay. So we've been hinting at it already. What are students allowed to do for their outcomes? So, I mean, this is the process, right? So, students choose their research question, they choose the tools that they want to learn about and try and experiment,
Mm.
they design their research plan. So, they're also deciding how to share their discovery.
Absolutely. And you know what? I will draw from the poster over your shoulder there, the Curiosity Project Fair. We in the past have seen the coolest projects come out of this exact sort of structure. So if you're not writing a paper, which you don't have to, we can see anything from art projects, photography projects, to new app designs, to legal documents, to educational brochures, to presentations, to whatever, you name it. It's wherever your work lends itself to, whatever it makes the most sense to be shared in the end. And so you could almost think of going through the same process throughout phase two as you did in phase one. You're still going through similar learning log checkpoints, but instead of developing that final paper, you're developing what is meaningful to you. And we're going to be very, very excited reviewers at the end to be able to see like what possibly can come out of this process. And every single person here is going to use generative AI in completely different ways. So it's totally okay if you are rushing into it and you're experimenting with everything versus someone who's very kind of reserved about how they're going to try and experiment. Maybe you only find its application useful here and there. It doesn't have to be every single thing is coded in generative AI trials and errors.
Hmm.
We really get to be our own individual researchers in this process.
I think the way I'm hearing it then is something like this, right? So when it comes to AI experimentation, we're looking for the right tool for the right job, and we don't know that yet, right?
Exactly.
And we don't know how necessarily to even use the tools, let alone what those tools are. Okay. And then when we do research, we're doing the right research for that particular research question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to the final step, we're looking for the right outcome for that project. So if a paper is not the right outcome, but something else is, they should do that, right?
Totally. And could I jump in and say that when we're talking about doing the right thing at the right time, or the right tool at the right time, or the right tool for the right problem, I would say that that is a characteristic of a lot of generative AI tools, is that
Mm.
it can threaten our ability to see what the right one is. So we have to often think like, if we're presented with something that we're told to be right from a generative AI tool, what happens if we don't believe that that's the right direction, the right tool? How do we retain that sense of control or ownership? How do we remain the, we can use all kinds of analogies. How do we remain the pilot in this process
Pilot,
versus
the
I know
master.
versus just being a follower of the tools that guide us? Like how do we fit into this equation? It's going to be quite an adventure to try and work our way through for the next month or so.
Oh, I think that's really good. I don't think the AI is a co-pilot in the sense of two shared, like a shared partnership, but is
Mm-hmm.
more like, the engine, right? And we have the dashboard, the ways of working. We have all those lights and things, right, to do the flying, but the AI can be part of the engine. So let me throw some just like possible outcomes at you because
Yep.
I'm having trouble believing you that I can do something else. So I can I can make a quilt as a discovery outcome.
You can make a quilt.
I could write a piece of proposed legislation on a new
Absolutely.
item. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
good stuff. I could design a kindergarten curriculum.
Yep. 100%.
Okay, excellent. I could redesign the interior of a car.
Yep.
Okay, wow. Okay, you're very generous here. So I could do a marketing pitch to Nike.
Absolutely not. No, I'm just joking. Of course you can do that.
So okay, I thought I found the edge there. Um, I can write a angry video rant for TikTok.
You absolutely can do all of that. I think as long as that's where the process leads to, you might not know where it's going to lead to right from the start either. You might start phase two and not know exactly what the final form is going to be. And in fact, that's part of the process of discovery
Yeah.
throughout this. Now, if you have an idea now, that's okay too. You can see if it works out, but don't be afraid if the research along the way, if the that we're still calling it the annotated bibliography phase, but really we're just collecting resources and hearing what other people are saying once we get to that point. At any stage along this process, you might decide that your work fits into a better final output. It might uh, not end up being that angry TikTok script rant, but it might end up being a YouTube video because that makes more sense based on the material you discover. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, and then the genre of the YouTube video, like one of these highly produced active moving ones or one of these talky heads on a screen, completely different kinds of editing and prep processes. But in all of this, we're sharing, like, we're trying to use integrity, be clear about our processes. I mean, the reality is, let's say I use AI to create, to rewrite my script for a YouTube video. That might be against the law in 3 months. And my YouTube video is already up there. Do you know what I mean? We don't
Hmm.
know what the future expectations and habits are going to be, let
Yeah.
alone what the tech will be. Yeah. So we're going to go back to core principles. In a sense, the way that I'm reading this is that when we learn how to use these AI utilities or other digital tools, we're going to be creating kind of portable skill sets, right? So we're not just trying to learn how ChatGPT works, but how to engage with that kind of generative AI device. Is that right? That's the key.
100%. No, that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that all makes sense. Tomorrow we're gonna in I think you're gonna do the same as brainstorming, mess mapping, mind mapping, and then do some kind of conversation with like how ChatGPT and some other products can help us with this. So
That's the plan. I'm looking forward to sharing what I know and also learning from the students in the classroom how they end up assessing information with AI tools. So as much
right.
as I'm excited to share, I'm excited to learn from everyone involved in this process.
Absolutely. The students, in fact, I'm roping students into doing some of that tomorrow for us. So Thursday, I'm going to come into the classes and try and encourage students to uh, use this as a chance to kind of find the motivation in the question rather than trying to make themselves do the project later on or something. Next Tuesday's library workshop.
That it is.
Okay, and then we're off.
That's it.
Okay, that's it.
You know what? I will say one more thing before we're done. Of all the projects that I've had the privilege of being a part of or overseeing, this is one of those projects that it pays to be involved with throughout. You don't want to leave this one to the last minute because discovery and having this sort of iterative phase to this project really requires coming along for the journey and leading the journey yourself. So if you haven't found the success that you were wanting in phase one, this is a clean slate for you to be able to really tackle and drive your own amazing personalized project starting from here. So, um,
Mm,
yeah, I think that's how I'd like to end it.
excellent. Well said. Let's end it there. We'll see you on campus tomorrow.
All right, I'll see you then.
See you, man.